Good morning. Talk about trials a little bit now. Trials have changed. Jurors have changed. And the real question is, when did the road fork? In 1861, people could look at John Morgan's painting, The Jury. 100 years later, they could go to the movie theater and watch 12 Angry Men. And just 38 years after that, they could turn on their television sets and watch the O.J. Simpson trial. Now, there's no doubt that there were a lot of changes during that 150 years, but can the argument be made that the most radical changes to jurors and jury trials have happened in the last 5 years? We think that it can. I'm going to start by talking about jurors. In 1990, we didn't have to worry about online jurors, didn't have to worry about it at all. In 2005, a Georgia juror used a cell phone to MapQuest the distance between the crime scene and the defendant's home. In 2007, a New York juror went online and got weather information about the day of the accident. But the last 9 months has shown some remarkable activity in this area. In August, Judge Goldberg denied a motion for new trial because a juror Googled the defense attorney. But he noted that it remains to be seen whether jurors will ultimately be sequestered during trial to ensure they do not use the Internet to obtain information. It's an interesting question. Is sequestration the only way to turn back the clock? And recently in October, you had a case where the judge found out that one of the jurors sent an email to a plaintiff attorney just 4 days after the trial. So imagine getting this email. Did you know your plaintiffs advocated the use of mushrooms and weed smoking and binge drinking all over the Internet? Motion for new trial, hearing, juror shows up and says, it's true I went online, it's true I read it, but I did it after deliberations before 4 days later. Motion for new trial denied. Courts have been trying to take action. We saw in November where a judge said, that's it. Newspaper reporters, you can't tweet during the trial. The exact opposite ruling of a Kansas judge 1 year before. We have the Judicial Conference Committee, which has said, hey, you know what the problem is? We're not giving them specific enough instructions. Maybe if we were more specific, they wouldn't go online. So here's the proposed model jury instructions, which say you can't use either to research or to communicate anything. And it lists telephone, cell phone, smartphone, iPhone, BlackBerry, computer, the Internet, any Internet service, or any text or instant messaging service, or any Internet chat room, blog, or website such as Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. So that should be interesting to listen to in the courts. Federal courts are mainly adopting that, but I will tell you that state courts are as well. San Francisco Superior Court started doing that after it learned that 600 jurors had gone online to research the case during the selection process. I find this one particularly disturbing. This is a New York juror who, during deliberations, sent a Facebook friend request. It was a female juror, sent the Facebook friend request to a male witness during the trial who just happened to be a New York firefighter. Okay, motion for new trial. Motion for new trial is denied, but Judge Clancy points out what I think is the obvious, that this constitutes a serious breach of her obligations as a juror and a clear violation of the court's instructions. So now that we know this, now that we know for the first time we've got jurors who are going home and going online, what do? You ask for the proposed model jury instructions. You ask for it at the beginning of voir dire and maybe at the end of every day of trial or the beginning of every day of trial. You also need to research your jurors. When the jury is there's a question of, and during voir dire, you're going to find out a lot of information, but you may find out more afterwards. You need to find out, but what you can't do is violate Rule 3.5. You can't actually contact them. You can't have any ex parte communication. So what does that mean? You can read what they have, but you certainly can't email them or tweet them, and you probably, and almost certainly, can't send a friend request so you can learn more about them. You can't have your paralegal do it or your cousin. One other thing to consider is that it's not just when they're online that jurors today can be dangerous. It's the fact that they're not online during the trial. People have issues who tweet every 10 minutes, and you're going to put them in a room and tell them they can't tweet. not just in the next 10 minutes, but for the next 10 days. What effect will that have on them? When was the last time that any of us asked a juror if they, how often or how many hours do they spend on a computer a day? Shouldn't we? If you flew Southwest, you may have seen this article, Powered Down, where they actually had a thermometer for gauging a person's addiction to the Internet. And I was wondering if we shouldn't ask some of these questions. If I ripped this out of the magazine you had, I apologize. It says, do you feel irritable when you are offline? Do you neglect sleep more than 3 times a week? Shouldn't we know? Shouldn't we know the answers to these questions? Are they listening to us? And we have to consider that when we're talking about the next 5 years, when we're talking about trials for the Gen X jurors and the Gen Y jurors. Let's realize the fact that Gen X and Gen Y people, they enjoy the clips on the soup more than they enjoy the shows themselves. I mean, if you think about it, YouTube has over 700,000 videos right now. And the average length, some of them are hours long, the average length of the 700,000 videos is 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, over 168,000 people viewed this 44-second clip in just 2 days. It is the clip of the Zorro cat and the mariachi cat. And no, I am not going to play it for you. And yes, if you look, you can see that this screenshot confirms I watched it for 22 seconds. It does not disappoint, though, if you get the chance. So the last thing that I will mention about jurors is this. I will say that Neil Postman wrote a book in 1985 saying that the medium limits ideas, that television has weakened our ability to think and to reason. He said that you have to consider the fact that we are becoming more visual than auditory, that it's affected not just our memory but the way that we learn information. I wonder what Neil Postman would say now that we have a medium, Twitter, that is limited to 140 words. What kind of ideas, what kind of faculties does that medium generate? I think Neil Postman would say that the road has forked, and I think he would wish us good luck.